You're sitting across from someone who's rewriting history in real time. They're calm, confident. They say you're remembering it wrong, that you're being dramatic, that it never happened the way you think it did. And here's what's strange, you don't spiral. Something in your body just knows. A quiet, unshakable certainty sits in your chest like a stone. You don't need them to confirm your reality. You already lived it. Now compare that to someone else in the same room. Same conversation. They start doubting themselves within minutes. The other person's confidence bleeds into their memory like ink into water. What's the difference between these two people? Odds are, one of them spent their childhood outside, unsupervised, solving real problems with real consequences. No adult to referee, no app to consult. Just raw experience and a nervous system that learned to trust itself. That's not a personality trait. That's neuroscience. Your brain has a built-in truth detector. Most people just never learn to use it. It's called the default mode network, the DMN. This is a cluster of brain regions that activates when you're not focused on the outside world, when you're daydreaming, wandering, doing nothing in particular. Neuroscientists used to think this network was irrelevant, just the brain idling. They were wrong. The DMN is where you construct your sense of self. It's where you process past experiences, simulate future scenarios, and critically, where you decide what is real about your own life. Think of it as your brain's internal editor. It takes raw experience and files it into long-term identity. Here's the problem. The DMN needs unstructured time to develop properly. Researcher Mary Helen Imordino-Yang at the University of Southern California spent years studying adolescent brain development and found that children who lack quiet, inward, self-directed time show measurably weaker self-concept formation. Their internal editor never gets trained. It stays slow, uncertain, easily overwritten. Now pair that with interoception, your brain's ability to read your own body's signals. The knot in your stomach, the looseness in your chest when something feels right, the heat that crawls up your neck when someone lies to your face. Interoception researcher Sarah Garfinkel at University College London has shown that people with stronger interoceptive accuracy make faster, more confident decisions and are significantly harder to manipulate through social pressure. Where does interoception get trained? Not in a classroom, not on a screen. It gets trained when an 8-year-old jumps off a roof and feels exactly what a bad decision feels like on the way down. When they negotiate with a bigger kid over territory and feel the difference between a real threat and a bluff. When they get lost in the woods and have to sit with genuine uncertainty until they find their way out. Every one of those moments is a calibration, a data point. The body logs it, the DMN files it. Over thousands of repetitions across a childhood, that kid builds what neuroscientists call a robust interoceptive map, a detailed personal physical library of what truth feels like versus what a lie feels like. Gaslighting works by attacking your memory and your perception, but you can't gaslight a library built from scraped knees and real consequences. The body remembers what the mind can be talked out of. That's the machinery, and most people born after the mid-90s never got the chance to build it. Comment the heart emoji below if you've ever felt that unshakable gut certainty, even when everyone around you was telling you that you were wrong. This didn't happen by accident. There was a reason children were always supposed to run slightly wild. Go back 50,000 years. A child in a hunter-gatherer band is not supervised. There is no designated play area, no scheduled activity. They roam with other kids across varied terrain, negotiate complex social hierarchies without adult intervention, and face consequences that are immediate and physical. Touch the wrong plant, misjudge the drop, trust the wrong kid with the wrong secret. The feedback loop is tight. Action, consequence, update. Developmental psychologist Peter Gray at Boston College has spent decades arguing that this loop is not optional. It is the core mechanism through which humans develop autonomous judgment. In his research on self-directed play, Gray found that children in unstructured environments develop what he calls real trust in their own perceptions, precisely because those perceptions have been tested against reality repeatedly, with genuine stakes. Your ancestors didn't have the luxury of a wrong perception. A child who could be easily convinced that the rustling in the grass was nothing when their gut said otherwise didn't survive long enough to pass on their genes. Reality testing was a survival skill, a sharp one. Natural selection spent millennia building a nervous system that, when properly trained, is extraordinarily resistant to distortion. Then came the modern conflict. It didn't happen overnight. It crept in through the 1980s and accelerated hard through the 90s and 2000s. Stranger danger panic. Liability culture. Scheduled playdates replacing spontaneous territory wars. Participation trophies replacing the cold, clarifying experience of losing. And then smartphones handing children a mediated, curated, algorithmically managed version of reality before their DMN had any chance to build a baseline for what unmediated reality even feels like. The feedback loop didn't just slow down, it got outsourced. Instead of body-based consequence loops, children began receiving socially mediated feedback. Likes, comments, parental validation, adult referees for every conflict. The question stopped being, what does my body tell me happened? And started being, what do other people say happened? That is precisely the cognitive architecture that gaslighting exploits. Researcher Jonathan Haidt at New York University, alongside Greg Lukianoff, tracked this generational shift in their work on what they call safetyism, the cultural obsession with protecting children from discomfort. Their data shows that generations raised under safetyism report dramatically higher rates of anxiety, external locus of control, and vulnerability to social reality distortion. They are more likely to defer to confident external voices over their own internal signals. The feral 80s kid wasn't tougher because of some vague generational character. They were tougher because their nervous system got the training it was evolutionarily designed to receive. The modern child, through no fault of their own, largely did not. That gap is not nostalgic sentimentality. It is a measurable neurological difference with real consequences in adult relationships, workplaces, and under pressure. This isn't theory. The data has been piling up for decades. Most people just haven't connected the dots. Start with Peter Gray's most cited finding. In a survey of nearly 300 members of the Society for Play Research, Gray documented a dramatic decline in children's free, unsupervised outdoor play beginning in the early 1980s, dropping by more than 50% over 2 generations. That same period maps almost perfectly onto the rise in childhood anxiety disorders, depression, and what clinicians began calling external locus of control, the tendency to believe that outside forces, rather than your own judgment, determine your reality. That correlation isn't coincidence, it's a pipeline. Then look at the Finnish model. Finland consistently ranks among the top 3 nations globally for education outcomes. But more relevant here is what their system does with unstructured time. Finnish children receive significantly more recess than American children. Longer breaks, less structured instruction time in early years. Researcher Pasi Salberg, who spent years documenting the Finnish system, noted that educators there operate on a foundational belief. Children who are trusted to manage their own time develop stronger internal regulation. They don't need external validation to know whether they've done something well. They feel it. That feeling is interoception, trained at scale, institutionally. Now look at Stuart Brown's work. Brown, a psychiatrist and founder of the National Institute for Play, spent years interviewing prisoners convicted of violent crimes. His initial hypothesis was that he'd find a pattern of abuse. What he found instead was almost universal play deprivation in childhood. Not abuse, absence. These were people who never developed the social consequence feedback loop through play. They couldn't read rooms accurately. They misinterpreted social signals chronically. Brown concluded that play deprivation doesn't just affect happiness, it damages reality processing at a fundamental level. A person who can't process social reality accurately is not just unhappy. They are manipulable. Here's where it gets uncomfortably specific. A 2019 study published in the journal Child Development by researchers Min Liu and colleagues tracked children from age 6 through adolescence, measuring autonomy in play against outcomes in social cognition. Children with higher rates of self-directed play showed significantly stronger theory of mind, the ability to accurately model what other people are thinking and feeling. They were better lie detectors, better at reading when a social situation didn't add up, better, in other words, at knowing when someone was trying to rewrite their reality. Compare that to findings from Jean Twenge at San Diego State University. Twenge has tracked generational psychological data since the 1980s. Her research shows that post-2000 adolescents, the first fully smartphone-native generation, report the highest rates of self-doubt, social anxiety, and what she describes as a collapse in felt autonomy. They are more likely to second-guess their own memories when contradicted, more likely to defer to confident external voices, more likely to experience what clinicians recognize as the early psychological profile of someone vulnerable to sustained gaslighting. The feral kid who spent summers building dangerous structures in the woods and settling disputes without a single adult present wasn't just having fun. They were running thousands of micro-trials in reality testing. Every trial sharpened the instrument. By adulthood, that instrument, their nervous system, had been calibrated against actual reality so many times that a single confident voice in a quiet room simply wasn't enough to overwrite it. The data doesn't romanticize the 1980s. Plenty went wrong in that era. But on this specific variable, the development of an autonomous, body-anchored sense of reality, the evidence is consistent and hard to dismiss. Here's what nobody talks about. Gaslit resistance isn't confidence. Confident people get manipulated all the time. What feral kids built was something quieter, a sensory archive. Every scraped knee, every bad social call, every time the weather turned dangerous and nobody came to warn them, that was a data point logged directly into the body. Not processed through language, not filtered through an adult's interpretation, raw, unmediated, theirs alone. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio calls these somatic markers, physical imprints of past experience that surface as gut feelings during future decisions. The body votes before the brain deliberates. That archive is almost impossible to argue with, because it was never built from words. You can't rewrite it with words. That's the plot twist. The feral kid's superpower isn't stubbornness. It isn't ego. It's that their truth is stored somewhere language can't reach. Gaslighting is a language attack. And some people were accidentally built with defenses that operate below language entirely. Not because they're special. Because they played outside unsupervised for 10,000 hours. You didn't grow up feral. That window is closed. But the neuroplasticity isn't. The DMN can still be strengthened. Interoceptive accuracy can still be trained. The somatic archive can still be built. It just requires deliberate effort as an adult, instead of accidental development as a child. Here's how. First, unstructured time. Non-negotiable. Set aside 30 minutes daily with no agenda, no phone, no podcast. Just you and your environment. Walk without a destination. Sit without a task. This feels profoundly uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is diagnostic. It means your DMN is undertrained. Researcher Marcus Reichel at Washington University, who first mapped the default mode network, found that consistent unstructured mental time measurably strengthens self-referential processing. You are literally rebuilding your internal editor. Second, body-first journaling. Before you write what happened, write what your body did. The tightness in your shoulders during that conversation. The drop in your stomach when they said that specific sentence. The way your jaw clenched before your brain caught up. This practice trains interoceptive accuracy by forcing you to treat physical sensation as primary data, not decoration. Do this for 30 days, and your body's signals will get louder, clearer, to talk yourself out of. Third, consequence exposure. Take on small, real stakes challenges where the outcome depends entirely on your own judgment with no safety net and no external validator. A solo hike with a paper map. A negotiation you handle alone. A decision made without polling 5 friends first. Each completed loop action, consequence, update, adds a data point to your somatic archive. Over time, those points accumulate into exactly the kind of body-anchored certainty that makes gaslighting slide off like water. Fourth, friction tolerance practice. Feral kids developed reality anchoring partly because they regularly sat with discomfort without escape. Cold, boredom, losing, conflict with no adult resolution. Modern life is engineered to eliminate all friction instantly. Deliberately reintroduce small doses. Sit with a difficult emotion for 10 minutes before reaching for your phone. Let a conflict breathe before you seek reassurance. Each time you tolerate friction without outsourcing your internal state, you strengthen the same neural pathways that make external reality distortion harder to land. None of this is complicated. All of it requires consistency. The feral 80s kid didn't do anything heroic. They just existed in an environment that demanded 10,000 hours of unmediated reality contact. You can replicate the neurological outcome, it just has to be intentional now instead of accidental then. Your nervous system is still listening. Give it something real to work with.